right, good morning, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us for our second annual SBIR STTR Con 2020. I'm Misty Madero. I'm the Industry Contracts Officer and the SBIR STTR Resource Center Manager here in the Office of Technology Partnerships. I want to start off by thanking our sponsors, the SBA and our Orange County Inland Empire SBDC network. A special thank you to Hannah Khalid for helping make this all possible. And today is our last day, but I did want to let you know again about our EPIC SBDC, Small Business Development Center, and our SBIR STTR Resource Center. Our EPIC SBDC provides individualized mentorship and access to capital to technology entrepreneurs at no cost. Here are some of the services our Resource Center provides. If you are interested in learning more or would like to sign up to be a client or would like Martin and I to help you with your SBIR, here is our contact information. Please email us. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to our entrepreneur in residence and SBIR STTR expert, Martin Kleckner.
Expert in quotes, maybe. But anyway, thank you, Misty, very much. And thank you all. This is indeed our final day of a two-week journey. And I think we've saved the best for last here. So today we're honored to have Dr. Katie Bratlie. And she is the Program Director of Partnerships for Innovation, which is part of or within the Division of Industrial Innovation and Partnerships, Directorate of Engineering with the NSF, National Science Foundation. The PFI offers science and engineering researchers who are funded by the NSF opportunities to perform translational research and tech development, catalyze partnerships, and accelerate transition of their discoveries from the lab to the marketplace. PFA has, I think, has 5 broad goals, and Katie, you're probably going to be addressing those, I suspect. But it's a great honor to introduce Dr. Bratlie. She is the Program Director of PFI. And she is a newbie. She recently joined the NSF in June of 2020. And since 2011, Dr. Bratlie has been an assistant professor of Department of Materials Science and Engineering and also Chemical and Biological Engineering at Iowa State University. Her research thrusts are development of biomaterials for medical applications and evaluation for drug delivery and regenerative medicine. She's also a good human because she spent quality time at my hometown at the University of Minnesota and for her bachelor's in science, and then moved over to get her PhD from UC Berkeley. So Katie, Dr. Bratlie, it's a pleasure and honor to have you today, and I'll hand the mic over to you. Welcome indeed.
All right, thank you for that introduction. See if I can just get my slides to show. All right, so I'm just going to talk about the different programs that we have in IIP, or rather that NSF has for funding translational research. So I'll just go over a brief overview of NSF and then dive a little bit more deeper into the Industrial Innovation and Partnerships division within NSF and the different programs that we have that might be of interest to all of you. So as you all are probably very familiar, NSF we're celebrating our 70th birthday this year, and NSF funds all sorts of different types of science. So this is just a chart of some of the different discoveries that have been made using NSF dollars over the past 70 years or so. And the big question then is, what is next? And that's where all of you are coming in, hopefully. So by the numbers, almost all of our $8.3 billion budget goes to fund research and educational activities. So that's a really high amount of money that's going right out the door. We have about 41,000 proposals, and out of that, about 11,000 of those are awarded. And then you can see from the other numbers that are listed here that we have a lot of impacts across the country in terms of the institutions that we're funding, the people that we're supporting, and the education that we're providing. And then probably more of interest here is that we have a lot of money that's going into seed public and private partnerships. So the industrial innovation and partnerships, our goal is to support high-tech small businesses and collaborations between academia and industry to transform discoveries into innovative commercial technologies with societal benefits. And that really, it runs the gamut from going from an academic research environment towards working with actual companies. So the programs that we have are the SBIR STTR, the Seed Fund, the Innovation Core or I-Core, Partnerships for Innovation, which is where I'm a program director, the Industry University Cooperative Research Centers, or the IUCRCs, and the goalie and interns. I'm just going to talk mostly about the SBIR, I-Core, and PFI programs today, since I think that would be of more interest to this audience. So what risks do we address? So the risks that we address is we try to develop skill sets in people, particularly students and postdocs, to educate them, to get them to become entrepreneurs. So that's where I-Core, PFI, and Intern all come in, is developing this training set. So Intern, it's a program where graduate students can go and do internships at companies. PFI is part of our directive is to have an educational plan to train the next set of entrepreneurs. And then I-Core is an activity where teams come in and try to understand what their market is to better position themselves for commercialization. And then in the accelerating areas, so getting things to market, we have I-Core, which is a lot of customer discovery. We have demonstrating, which is the technical aspects, so getting all of that preliminary data so that you are ready to go after VCs and angels for further funding. And that's through the SBIR STTR Fund, the IUCRC centers, and the PFI. And then finally translating this into the commercial realm, which is through the SBIR Fund. So just to start off with the SBIR. So the two tracks that are available are the SBIR and STTR, and the difference between those two is really just how much of an academic partner involvement there is. They're both reviewed by the same panels. But the amount of funds that were used to fund these was about $200 million in 2018, and that's gone up a little bit since then. And the topic area from here, you can see we fund lots of different things. And these percentages, they are dynamic over years. So it really depends on what is being proposed and where different markets are going. So all of these things could be changed. We don't have a set amount of dollars that's going necessarily towards life sciences. It's really where the best proposals are. So the Seed Fund, it funds startups in the development and groundbreaking, high impact, high risk technology stages. And the goal is to transform scientific discovery into products and services with commercial and societal impact. And the funding goes almost exclusively towards R&D, so research and development. Our recent Phase 1 awardees are, so these are just the stats of those awards. So 85% have 5 or fewer employees, so they're really small companies. The definition of a small company is 500 or fewer employees, and so these are really small companies. 72% were founded within the past 3 years, and 75% are first-time SBIR STTR award winners. And you can go and search for what has been funded by going to NSF. If you just type in NSF award, I think the first thing in Google will be the search page where you can see what has been funded through SBIR. And then perhaps more importantly than what is the portfolio of our fundees is what have they done since. So since 2014, there's been $7.2 billion in follow-on financing. which is great. And 97 have had successful exits in terms of acquisitions, mergers, or IPOs. So these are successful companies that are being funded here. One thing that has changed in the past couple of years is that there's now a project pitch, and the project pitch is a really valuable piece of feedback. So you can go to SBIR.nsf.gov or seedfund.nsf.gov, and you can start a project pitch. And so a project pitch is a smaller version of the full proposal, and you'll get quick feedback from the program directors, either encouraging you or not encouraging you to apply for a phase 1 grant. So this is really useful because then you can use that feedback to improve your proposal before you submit it for the actual phase 1 proposal that would be evaluated by the panel. And that's now required before you can submit for phase 1. So the money, this is actually a little bit higher now. So phase 1 is now $256,000. I don't know where they came up with that number, but that's for 6 to 12 months of funding. And so that's really the pilot studies, the feasibility of whether or not this will work. Then once you have phase 1 funding, the next thing in your mind immediately should be applying for phase 2 and how you can make that proposal really successful for the phase 2 award. So then phase 2, that'll be making a prototype, and that's a 24-month project. And if you are able to get phase 2, then you're automatically eligible for phase 2B, which is a 1-to-2 match from NSF. So if you are able to raise $1 million in third-party funding, then NSF will give you $500,000 as a match. So it's a really great way of increasing the amount of dollars that are going towards your company that are non-dilutive. The review criteria here is the intellectual merit. So how is this transformative? How is this going to be disruptive towards the current market? What is the commercial potential? So how many people are going to be impacted and how many dollars are going to be able to be generated from this? And then the broader impacts, how is this going to affect society as a whole? And those are the big things that the panel and the PD will be looking for when they're evaluating these proposals. The other program that if you don't know about, then I would encourage you to apply for is I-Corps. And so I-Corps has, from IIP, there's $17 million that was spent on I-Corps in 2018. And then there's also programs throughout the rest of NSF that bring that total up to $33 million. And so what I-Corps is it's fostering entrepreneurship. And so you have teams of typically 3 individuals that will complete over 100 customer interviews. And those customer interviews will help you determine whether or not there is interest in your technology, because that is one of the big reasons why startups fail, is that they're making something that there's just not a market need for. And so these interviews really help you to change your goals in your technology and pivot towards the appropriate market. So the goals are to spur translation of fundamental research and to train NSF-funded faculty, students, and other researchers in entrepreneurial skills. So the teams, they consist of at least 3 individuals: the technical lead, which is usually the academic PI, the entrepreneurial lead, which is typically the postdoc or graduate student, and then a business mentor, which is an individual from industry, obviously, that will work together with these 100+ interviews. And you can go ahead and apply for this right now, just submitting an executive summary if you go to I-Corps on NSF. And then there are also nodes and sites that are larger I-Corps regions. And so we have 9 nodes involving 27 universities. There's 99 university sites, And NSF is not the only agency that teaches I-Core. There's 8 other federal agencies that do this as well, and they're using similar curricula. And since 2013, we've had 1,300 teams, more than 600 companies, and then most importantly, those companies have gone on to raise $300 million. So then the last program that I'll talk about is PFI, which is my program. And in PFI, this is taking a step back prior to getting SBIR and STTR funding. So this is really the bridge between basic science research done in the lab and the commercialization work that's being done in an SBIR. It's in that middle area. And we have 2 tracks. One of them is the technology translation, or the TT, and the other one is the research partnerships, or the RP. And we have a budget from 2018 of about $21 million. So the difference between these two, the TT is a slightly smaller grant. It's $250,000 for 18 to 24 months. And this is usually a single PI can do all of the research that's involved, and it's going to support early prototyping. The requirement for all PFI grants is that there needs to be NSF lineage. So the PI or co-PI on the proposal needs to have current or recently expired research grant. So, and recently expired means within the past 7 years. Or they can be previously completed the I-Core training within the past 4 years. The TT, or the RP, is slightly larger than the TT. The grants are $550,000 for 3 years, and they're open to any technology area that's covered by NSF, just like with the TTs. It has that same NSF lineage requirement. And the difference here is that it's a multi-disciplinary approach. So it's going to require more than just a single PI. And we also have a research partner that's required, or an industry partner that's required on this in order to be able to get this funded. And so the goals that we have for PFI is that we really want these to then lead to SBIR funds and lead to licensing and commercialization of everything that's being developed under these grants. So the IP that's derived, we want that to be commercialized. Ideally, we'd like it to be licensed as well. And one of the things, since the RPs require an industrial partner, there's a collaboration that's going to be fostered between these academics and the industrial folks. And another component of this is that we require an educational component for training future entrepreneurs. And specifically, that means the postdocs and graduate students that are involved in this proposal. There's going to be some sort of program that's going to train them in this area. And then with all NSF grants, we want to increase the participation of women, minorities, and persons with disability in these areas. So the different elements of the PFI proposal, we have technology development, which is common to SBIR proposals or to traditional engineering proposals. There's some technology that's being developed. The difference, though, that's from traditional academic proposals is that there needs to be a demonstration of commercialization potential. There has to be a partnership, especially with the RPs. There's an education and leadership development component to train the future entrepreneurs, and there's a broadening participation, which is a requirement for all NSF proposals. So just to go into the industrial partner just a little bit more for the PFI. So it's required for the RP track, so the larger grants, it's required. For the smaller grants, it's encouraged. And most of our awardees have an industrial partner if they're in the smaller grant, the TTs. And what this really does is it demonstrates to us, the program directors, and to the panel that there is a strategic commercial interest in this technology that's being developed by demonstrating that you have this partnership. And the partner really, they should have an established record of commercial revenue. So they should be able to demonstrate this from sales or licensing of their technology. What we don't want is we don't want the majority of the revenues coming from grants or government contracts. We want them to really demonstrate that they have something that can be commercialized. The partner can be for-profit or nonprofit. It doesn't matter as long as they're able to show that they're generating commercial revenue. And they should have a proven experience in bringing products or services to whatever that proposed target market sector is. In the training future leaders in innovation and entrepreneurship, we have a section that's required for developing these entrepreneur skill sets in PhD students and postdocs. And part of that is developing learning objectives, learning outcomes, and an assessment plan. And there should be a mentorship by the industrial partner, if there is an industrial partner on the proposal, because they're the ones who really have that expertise in entrepreneurship that they're going to be able to provide to these students. So then the real question is, where do you fit? And you're the one who's best able to answer that, be it in the seed fund, so the SBIR, which is you have a startup company and you have a technology that you're interested in pushing further towards commercialization. I-Core, so you're doing some market studies, or PFI, which is we're translating things from the academic lab to the startup. And then the projects that I didn't talk about were the IUCRC, goalie, and interns. So if you have any questions on any of this, you can certainly send me an email. And my email is listed here, either kbratlie@nsf.gov or pfi@nsf.gov. And then if you're interested in learning more about the program, there is our website. And with that, I wanted to leave a lot of time for questions. I'd be very happy to answer any that you may have.
Katie, thank you very much indeed. Very informative and much appreciated. I just wanted to make certain you had, I think, first of all, indicated that for a corporate partner, you had delineated certain distinguishing characteristics. And my reason for asking that is that we get approached quite often from young companies or startups, that is to say. And some of them may be already in the mode of generating at least some revenue, but would they really qualify as an acceptable corporate partner for a PFI initiative?
They might. It depends on whether or not they have an established track record of generating revenue. Another approach that you could take is you could have more than one industrial partner. So you could have the small business and then another business on top of this too. That's pretty common with a lot of our PFI proposals. We'll get more than just one partner involved in this. And sometimes that can be helpful because the small business might have a little bit more time to devote to, say, I-Core activities than a larger company.
Great. And I know that you hadn't planned on discussing it much, but excuse me, we are intrigued, at least to learn a little bit more about IUCRC and goalie and so forth. And so number one, yeah, would you mind describing those just a tad? And then is there a role for us at all in that, or maybe not?
Oh yeah, there's a role for you. So the IUCRCs, those are center grants. They're multi-million-dollar. They're not as large as like the ERC 10 or $20 million grants, but they're large center grants that involve multiple industrial partners working with multiple universities. So there is definitely space for companies of all sizes in IUCRCs. Generally, you see small, medium, and large size companies all involved in those IUCRCs. And then, of course, there's the academic partner that needs to be involved in that. And then with the goalie, that could be of interest as well to some of the folks here. So a goalie, it's a proposal that would be initiated by the academic. And the goal there is to get some additional experience in industry. So that could be by a variety of mechanisms. It could be that an individual from industry comes and works in the academics lab. It could be that somebody from this PI's team goes and works in the lab at this company. Or it could be that they have a project that's going on that's going to be funded by this. And the goalie, it can be a supplement to an already existing proposal that you have. So like a PFI grant, we have a fair number of individuals that have goalie supplements, or it can be a grant that's submitted just as a standalone to a regular mechanism. And then the intern, that is for graduate students who are currently being funded by NSF grants. And it provides $55,000 for the graduate student to spend 6 months as an intern at an industry of their choosing. You'd have to say what that company is before applying for that. But that's a really good way of getting that student actual experience in an industrial setting, which is quite different than working in the academic setting.
Thanks, Katie. And Mina had a question. On your website, the PFI website or NSF, is there a listing of names of companies and associated projects? And Mina, I suspect you're asking that have been funded.
Yeah, I do not believe that we have a list of the companies and the projects that have been funded. Where you can find that information is if you go to the NSF award search page, you can type in PFI, and then everything that's been funded by PFI will be populated, and then you can look through all of the abstracts. But it's not very likely that they're going to tell you which companies were associated with this, since the information that NSF releases to the public is going to be the PI on the proposal, the co-PIs, the title, and the abstract. And so unless the PIs specifically mention which company is the partner in the abstract, that might be difficult to tease out.
Got it. Okay. And for those of us, Katie, who are fortunate enough to be awarded a PFI grant, and I assume this is from someone anonymous, so I don't know whether he or she is discussing SBIR or PFI. But when we are awarded, how is money generally dispersed? Is this monthly? Is it per an invoice process? Is it right away lump sum? How exactly does that work? What are the mechanics of retrieving funds?
That should be, so you should be able to spend the money if you wanted to spend all of the money on day one. Theoretically, that would be possible. It would probably raise some red flags at your institution, but the money would be awarded so an award is made to the academic institution. And then you should be able to start spending on that account immediately. And then usually the way that it works is that as you spend, the university will then invoice, is typically how it's done. But you just keep spending, and then the admin staff at the university typically takes care of the invoicing process.
Got it. Okay. And Jessica, your question is to Misty or yours truly here. And Misty, if you wanted to tackle that personally, feel free. But we do our very best to respond to requests for help ASAP, both EPIC and the SBIR Resource Center. Hopefully that same day when you reach out to us. So reach out to Misty or otherwise, and we'll get back to you on that one.
So yeah, just to chime in, I have a list of people who've contacted me during the conference, so I'll be reaching out to you Monday and Tuesday of next week to hopefully set up appointments next week to meet. Generally, we set up a quick call, and then I can discuss with you what the EPIC SBDC provides, and then we can get you signed up and help you right away.
Great, thanks. And Tala, the answer is yes, this conference applies to IT-based businesses as well. I hope that answers your question. If not, please send another to clarify. And Dotan, you were indicating that a small business is not allowed to partner with a corporate to partner. I don't know what you mean by this is a MOAB, but does any, let me see if I can put that in a question for you, Katie. So with regard to the PFIs, or the one especially calling for, albeit I think they both are, corporate partnerships from the university researcher, is it possible, acceptable for a small business concern to perhaps collaborate or partner with a revenue generating established corporation to perhaps work in concert with the university researcher for a PFI initiative?
Yes, that would be acceptable. So the proposals need to come from the academic institution. And then the academic would then have subawards to the small business and perhaps the larger company as well.
Okay, got it. And Juana has a question, Katie, complimenting you on your talk, first of all, and ditto to that, obviously. She wants a little bit more explanation, if she could get it, relative to the PFI and commercialization, demonstration of commercialization and so forth. So let me see if I can try to infer, Juana, what you're saying here. So Katie, if we are applying for a PFI grant, what are the expectations of commercialization plan and then of course execution of same as we proceed forward with that?
Yeah, that's a great question, because these grants are definitely not as far along as an SBIR. So with the commercialization plan, it's not going to be as, I guess, firm as what an SBIR proposal would be, where you spend a good deal of the proposal talking about your commercialization plan. It's a shorter section. It's usually around 1 to 3 pages for the commercialization plan. But what the panel usually wants to see is that you've demonstrated that you understand where the market is and where you may be going, because we understand that things can change while you're doing the grant, executing the activities in the grant, and especially when you're in I-Corps, you could end up realizing that you need to change where your market focus is, or maybe your technology doesn't pan out in exactly the direction that you were hoping it to. So it's not something that's completely set in stone, but it should demonstrate. The main thing that we're looking for is that you're able to demonstrate that you understand what the market is and what you would need to do in order to be able to commercialize. So for instance, if you're doing something where it would be in the biomedical realm, which we do fund, it's not just NIH that funds biomedical research, but if you're in the biomedical realm, you definitely need to be talking about how you're going to do FDA clearance at some point. So what these hurdles would be to get into commercialization, those are the things that we're looking for.
Terrific, thanks. And hi, Hunan, welcome back. And this is the question, I think, Katie, that we, one of us may have asked your colleague Ben a couple of days ago, Ben Schrag, and it pertains to, but in that particular case, it pertained to SBIR, STTR. For the PFI, RT, and TT, do either of those grants support animal studies for medical devices?
They can. Yes. So we do support animal studies. And for that, you have to have a vertebrate document that details what it is that you're going to do with these animals. And you need to describe those plans inside of the proposal. But yes, we do allow animal studies. I currently have in my portfolio individuals who are doing work on animals.
Terrific. Thanks, Katie. And Catherine, if this was a Jeopardy game, you would have had to put this in the form of a question, but I'll read it anyway. Catherine is thank you, threefold. So you must be doing something right, Katie. This is terrific for sharing all this with you. Very informative. So I always make a point of passing along all these wonderful comments from people who love what you're doing. So thank you so much for that, Catherine. And so this is from Anonymous, and she says, first of all, go Cyclones, as opposed to, I guess, go Golden Gophers or go Bears, which is what I always get a lot out here on the coast. But what is the impact of COVID on SBIR, STTR funding awards? And maybe we can expand that to PFI as well.
Yeah, COVID has been, it's caused a big change in research. The changes that we've seen so far have been a lot of people, can't go into the lab and can't do work. So there's a lot of no-cost extensions that are being granted. Everybody that I've talked to has been very liberal on extending these no-cost extensions. But perhaps more to the point is what is going on with grants that are currently being submitted. We're seeing, at least with PFI, we're seeing a big influx of proposals compared to what we usually get. So it about doubled this last cycle in August. And so I guess we'll see what happens with our next submission cycle, which is in January. But it also, interestingly enough, at the last cycle in January of 2020, there were fewer submissions, and maybe that was because of administrative challenges, although January 2020 was really before the U.S. was being impacted by this. But yeah, we are seeing a lot of changes with people not being able to get the work done on the timelines that they were expecting, and we've been understanding of this because it's impacting everybody. And then there's been a huge increase in the number of proposals that have been submitted.
Got it. Thanks, Katie. And this is a question from a colleague of ours, Brian, and it is with regard to your discussion on lineage for PFI. And Brian was wondering if a team of researchers went through a site I-Corps program, such as ours. We are a site, as you probably know, here at UC Riverside, an I-Corps site. Will that work, or do they need to go through a national I-Corps program to use that as a qualification for lineage?
If you were doing the 100 plus interviews, and if you have an NSF award number, then it should satisfy the NSF lineage requirements. But that might be one that I could follow up specifically. If you want to give me an email, then I can look into that case and let you know.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So yeah, we'll ask another colleague, Jay Gilberg, who is the director of our I-Corps program. He probably knows the answer to that question anyway, but we'll connect both of you together and tackle that one. Thanks, Katie. And Juana, welcome back again. You can give us as many questions as you want. Is there a place, Katie, where we could review previously funded SBIR Phase 1 projects? I think someone else may have asked a similar question, and I think your response was, could you reiterate that if I could impose on you to do that? I know that you had answered a similar question earlier.
Yeah, so NSF doesn't release the proposals for the SBIR projects, but you can get the abstracts. The abstracts of the funded projects are all publicly available off of the, if you go to, I forget exactly what the web address is, but if you just go to Google and type in NSF award, it should be the first thing that pops up, and then you can search in there. And so for SBIR, you just type in SBIR into the search bar, and that should give you everything that's funded. And there's a lot of things that you can alter there too if you're interested in what's been funded in the past year or in different states, all of that kind of stuff.
Okay, terrific. Thanks, Katie. And thank you, Jessica, very much indeed. Jessica, Katie is offering you thanks for a great presentation. You'll probably get a bunch of them before the hour is over with, I can assure you of that. Another follow-up question from Sophia. If the team has incorporated but is still at the university, can the funds go to the company bank account instead? This pertains to PFI, I suspect. Do you know any of the logistics on that?
Yeah, so the money has to go to the academic institution. You can make subawards out of the grant, and then that would go into the company bank account. But the money that's dispersed for PFI from NSF is going to go to the academic institution first.
Yep. So Sophia, just reach out to Misty or yours truly, and we can clarify that question for you for University of California Riverside protocol. And Bradley, you may need to resend a question if I can impose on you to do that. And welcome back, by the way, Bradley. I'm not sure if I understand the question. If Bradley, I think what you may be asking, if you are engaged in an active SBIR, an NSF-funded SBIR project right now. Yeah, Bradley, could you resend? Are you asking that? Can you apply for a phase 1? Can you apply? I don't know NSF, if NSF has direct to phase 2 or fast tracks or anything like that at all, Katie. And I'm probably
no, we don't.
Not
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, we don't have fast tracks to phase 2. In order to get to phase 2, you have to go through the phase 1 gate first.
Okay. And Bradley, I don't know whether you were asking this as well, but I thought maybe it might, Katie, be a good time to ask. You know, PFI relative to SBIR, is this sequential? Thus, would PFI be a precursor to SBIR?
That's what we have it envisioned as, is that the process would be some basic research grant that you've gotten from NIH, or not NIH, NSF in one of the other directorates. And then you go to PFI, and then you use that to get the SBIR phase 1, and then finally the SBIR phase 2. That's the evolution that we're envisioning. You're not locked into any of that by any means. If you wanted to, there's nothing prohibiting you from submitting proposals simultaneously to both SBIR and PFI at the same time. If they were both awarded, you wouldn't be able to get both of those, obviously, since we only fund one project. But you can apply to both of them simultaneously if you wanted to.
Ah, okay. These would be, as you're answering it, Katie, these would be identical projects, same aims, same approach, and so forth,
yeah.
Okay, that's what you were referring to. If they were distinguished projects, one pursuing certain aims, likewise the other a different direction, how would that work?
So if you can clearly articulate that the projects are completely different and that there's no overlap between a PFI and an SBIR, then you could theoretically be awarded both of them if they were both made in the same cycle. Yeah,
Got it.
that would be allowed.
Okay, terrific. And Dotan, I believe you're representing, you're speaking on behalf of yourself or small business, your small business concern. Can we partner with a large cap? That would seem to be a yes to me, but maybe, you know, for a PFI, I believe in this case. Or perhaps for an SBIR as well, frankly. Is that okay?
It would be okay with the PFI for a small company or startup company to partner with a larger company. You'd have to have an academic partner because it's required to have the academic partner. They're the ones who have to be able to submit the grant. With SBIR, I am not entirely sure if that would be allowed. That would be something that one of the PDs would be able to answer better. I kind of suspect that it might not be allowed to partner between a small business and a large business, because then you might not still qualify for the small business designation. But if this were just a contracting service, so for instance, if you were going to go and do animal studies with Charles River and pay them money in order for them to do the animal experiments, and that would be allowed. So that the exact nature of the partnership, I think, would be something to discuss with the SBIR program directors.
Terrific.
But with PFI, it would be allowed.
I see. Okay, terrific. Jared has a question. Of the 3 programs that you had discussed, not including IUCRC and GOLI, the prior 3, he was wondering if there is someone that he could talk to. In other words, reach out and maybe do a deeper dive. I would imagine that could, of course, be you. But it brings another question, and Jared, I don't know whether I'm doing you justice or not, but we know about the project pitch and how critically important it is. But would it also make sense, and I call it pollination, Katie, where maybe we could just reach out to you or one of your colleagues, Ben, for example, with whom we met a few days ago, with sort of like an LOI, letter of interest, letter of intent, or letter of inquiry, that is to say, even preceding a project pitch, just to make certain that we have our ducks in a row in terms of how we, you know, what type of content we do indeed put in our project pitch for your consideration. In other words, can we just engage?
I would suspect that SBIR would be open to this, but speaking just specifically for PFI, we definitely encourage people to contact us before submitting their proposals with an executive summary, so 1 or 2 page description of the project. And that's specifically so that we can see whether or not you're addressing all of the necessary components of the proposal. So in particular, the NSF lineage component. We can't comment on where you should be going with your research, in what directions those should be going, but we can tell you whether or not you have addressed all of the different components that need to be addressed for the proposal. And I think that helps align yourself for when you actually submit the proposal. So I would encourage anybody who's interested in submitting for PFI to write up a 2-page executive summary.
Aha. So that brings up a question that I should have asked earlier, Katie, and that is, so for PFI, we do not need to submit a project pitch, so this executive synopsis or summary is in lieu of that, so to speak?
Yeah, you do not even need to submit an executive summary, strictly speaking. You could just submit directly a proposal, but there's no project pitch required for PFI. The only thing that's required is you don't have to tell us that you're submitting. The only thing that you have to do is actually submit a proposal. For PFI. There's no project pitch. You don't have to send me an executive summary, but I would encourage you to send me an executive summary so that I can look through it and see whether or not you have all of the necessary components, because the last thing that anybody wants is their proposal to be returned without review because they're missing some necessary piece that they could have put in their proposal if they had just contacted the program director.
So Katie, you are indeed preaching to the choir. This is something that we highly, highly recommend no matter what. And we know from many agencies, they may say, you know, Martin, you don't need to do that. And I say, yeah, I get it, but it certainly is very, very helpful. We call it pollination. Yes. So Katie is, as far as I'm concerned, is absolutely spot on. Even if you don't need to submit a project pitch for a PFI, highly encourage everyone to put together a single or a 2-page executive synopsis, send it to Katie, engage in a conversation. It's worth its weight in gold. And, oh, okay, Dotan, thank you. So Dotan's message to me, Katie, was that previously funded projects can all be seen at fpds.gov. Does that kind of ring a bell? Me neither.
That might, oh yeah, so that would be for all federally funded, yeah.
All federally
There's a specific
funded.
NSF, yeah.
Terrific. Thanks, Dotan, very much indeed for that. We'll definitely make a note of that. That's good advice. Hey, Juana, during this week's presentation, your colleague Ben, by way of Ben, it was mentioned that SBIR Phase 2 funding takes form of a cooperative agreement. Good question. And the reason why it's a good question is we just, some of us still wanted a little bit more of a clarification on exactly what SBIR Phase 2, I believe, is transitioning to. Could we ask you to maybe discuss briefly what exactly Phase 2 cooperative agreements are all about, and how is it different from what we're accustomed to?
So I believe that there's a kind of a template document on NSF that goes through what it gives you an example cooperative agreement. Oh, I think that Zoom might have crashed on me, but it's trying to reload, so you won't be able to see my webcam for a minute or two. But the cooperative agreement, it's what they're looking for there is how the partnership is going to be laid out in terms of moving forward.